Right. Well, it's 12:03. I'm hoping that anybody who would like to be here for the beginning has already been able to log on. But I'd like to welcome all of you to the 12th presentation in our Spring 2020 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. This is a seminar that is now in its 6th semester, sponsored by the Office of Sustainability at Westchester University, the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs, and the Office of Distance Learning. We have, if you were on the webinar just a minute ago, you heard me say that we had to do some readjusting with the second half of the semester when all of the seminar series had to go online. We've had some of our originally scheduled presentations and we've added others. We're very grateful today to Dr. Michael Giovine and his students Natalie Fenner, Tyler Haney, Forrest Krupp, Ben Popp, and Melina Schauerman for joining us to talk about a really interesting course and project they have been working on this semester. I would like to let everyone know before I hand the floor over to the team that we will have one more presentation in our series a week from today at the same time, where I, with the Office of Sustainability, will be providing an update on our efforts to update our climate action plan for Westchester University. So if you can join us next week, we'll be very happy to have you be part of the audience and the conversation. Now, however, I'd like to finish up my comments and thank Michael Giovine and his students and pass the floor to them. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you. Thanks. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
All right, Ben, you're taking over, right?
Sure. So we're here today to present our upcoming exhibit, Earth Day at 50, Lessons for a Sustainable Future, and just talk about how we've gone about planning this exhibit and the future of the exhibit with the current crisis.
Great.
So here's just a little agenda for today. So we're going to start with Dr. Giovine, who's going to give us an introduction to the class, sort of how that works, and then talk about the exhibit design process and how we go about creating an exhibit. And then I will take over and talk a little bit about what the exhibit is going to look like, how we're planning it, and just some of the discussions that we had going into the actual exhibit itself. And then moving on from there, we have students from the class who are each leading their own section of the exhibit, their own exhibit within the overall exhibit, and they're going to talk about their individual projects and research. And then Dr. Giovine will again talk about the modifications that we've made to the exhibit because of the current crisis that we're in.
All right, well, thanks. So, once again, thank you all for coming. I do see members of the community. I see members of the Sustainability Advisory Council who have already come and helped out in giving feedback to the students. You want to switch the slide really quickly. Just a very, very quick overview. So I'm the director, in addition to being in the Anthropology and Sociology department, I'm the director of the Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology, located in an old library. I do want to drive everybody to our website, which is simply wca.edu/museums. You can see the updates that are happening, and you can explore our collections, and of course virtual exhibits that inevitably will have to be put up. You want to go to the next slide? The museum, what constitutes a museum is both this kind of public education mission, but also you have to have a collection. And our collections have the museum's only about 5 years old, but really we've been calling it this for only about 2. But our collections have spanned, the whole 1900s pretty much. And we have a vast collection of archaeological and ethnographic artifacts. We have tens of thousands of artifacts that are some over 5,000 to 8,000 years old. that Dr. Hooley, who's here, primarily studies in northeastern woodlands. We have our former sociology professor who is from the Andes, has a wonderful collection of indigenous hats that were donated. We have stuff from Rwanda. We have a field school in Rwanda. We have a very vast and growing collection that's being used a lot for teaching of the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. We've just acquired a great collection of Papua New Guinea artifacts as well that are being cataloged as well. So we do have a vibrant research and practice institution. The next slide. So this is about the 11th exhibit in total. And I wanted to emphasize that the museum, very quickly, is a small and dynamic museum. So the point of the museum is that we are teaching a new generation of students, particularly in the new museum studies minor that was just started in the fall, to really understand the behind the scenes practices and all of the efforts, different types of skills and efforts that go into running a museum. And we have several courses, many courses within the museum studies minor that are interdisciplinary in nature. And I know some of you are teaching some of them who were zoomed in today. Certainly, the core courses are an introductory intro to museum studies, which is an I course, an interdisciplinary course, and then also a collections management course that Dr. Hooley runs, and then this Museum Studies 358 and 558 joint undergraduate or graduate course on curation, where students learn the process from start to finish of curating their own museum exhibit. And we consider that, if you want to switch the slide, really the point of this is to engage students in learning. We talk a lot about high impact educational practices, which is something that George Q talks about for educational. I think that's the next slide, is going to kind of pop through that as well. These are deep approaches to learning that holistically engage students. It engages them intellectually, emotionally, bodily, right? It includes both acquiring the ways that we get information, but also understanding our underlying context. And according to Q, is shown to have higher outcomes. Students retain material more. They tend, because you're working in the real world and studying things, you're making stronger and more lasting connections between the intellectual academic material you're studying and real life. That's, of course, what we're trying to do here, especially with these sustainability lectures. And also what I really, really am big on is it fosters a sense of self-reflexivity. We want students, especially when we're dealing with sustainability, we want students to understand their place in the world, how their individual practices really are impacted and impact the greater environment. And so there's nothing better than doing an exhibit on Earth Day and also Arbor Day, which is Friday, which is when the exhibit was supposed to open to the public, that would really, really hammer this. You want to go to the next slide? So the point, and these are just components, obviously, that it demands of students to really spend time and effort to purposeful tasks, to spend quality time with students, peers, and faculty, such that you kind of get almost a behind-the-scenes view of the way that your peers and your faculty mentors kind of learn and how they do their research. This is really built into these types of museum exhibits, and certainly this particular exhibit on Earth Day, because we bring in faculty, right, who have done or active in practices of sustainability, of advocating for sustainability on campus, and especially of researching sustainability, to ensure that the students get a really visceral understanding of how different people approach it in different disciplines and what the various facets are, and hopefully it makes broader connections, as we'll see from the students discussing this. Yeah, so just very, very quickly, for those who haven't heard this spiel before, because this is my dog and pony show, here is the process. I take a 4-step process to planning, to putting on and mounting an exhibit. An exhibition is what we would call it, that's comprised of many exhibits. The first phase is the planning phase. This is where you get probably the most substantive time and effort, at least what they think. There's a lot of research that goes on, and so the students really had a lot of time to conduct research, but also to have substantial interactions with peer and faculty. We did have in January, I don't know if you have that slide or not, but we did have the faculty come, and I see some of you today. I see Cheryl, I saw other people and Heather Hooley to come and brief the students, hear the students' vision after we kind of learned about sustainability a little bit and did a little bit of research to kind of, show them different facets and give them some feedback on it. And I have to say, it was a little bit, I think the students felt overwhelmed a little bit after that because it was such a great and productive meeting that had a lot of various facets to it. And then we had to have many, many conversations where we were trying to figure out where we should go with this, because there's lots of different ways that we can go. In terms of the design process, in the next slide, we have, here's the briefing by the professors on their vision. We have roundtable discussions, we workshop big ideas. There's also, so for the design, we're basically, once we come up with a big idea, which is essentially the idea of the thesis of our exhibition, the students come up with their own components of what we want to do in small groups and small exhibits. We get a logo together, and we were very fortunate to have one of our students, Kelly Billings, her husband Kyle is a professional designer of marketing and logos and things, and so he's worked, gave a great class on what it goes into a good logo and branding. We also acquire artifacts, and we've started to do that, but we were put on hold, as the students will tell you about. And then, of course, construct and design these things, workshop all the labels, seeing what ones are more effective than others. So I think I'll pass that over to Ben now.
All right, so moving on, kind of how we tackled that process specifically for this exhibit, Earth Day at 50. The first few things that we had to kind of decide, and there's a lot of theory backing this, and I'll try not to get too in the weeds with museum theory here, but that was sort of we had a strong museum studies backing and deciding how we're going to do this. So we needed to decide our message, that's our big idea, and the title and how would those two interact, and then kind of decide how we're going to convey that message, what kind of models for learning, how we're going to categorize and organize the individual exhibits, and then how do we make those exhibits accessible. And then finally, the physical design is the last part that I'll talk about, what the exhibit is actually going to look like. So the big idea statement that we crafted, and it's one sentence, but it took quite a few days to kind of narrow it down and really get it to be exactly what we wanted it to be. Is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day is an empowering reminder that positive actions in daily life can combat the ongoing environmental crisis that humans have created. And I think one of the reasons why it took so long to create this big idea statement is we really wanted the statement to reflect the message that we felt was important, which was kind of capture the reality of the current crisis that we're in terms of the environmental crisis, the climate crisis, but also provide a hopeful message for the future so that we can empower the individuals who come to our museum. And I think that's really what this big idea captures, is that duality that yes, there is a very big problem right now, but at the same time, we need to provide hope and empowerment. So for our models of how we wanted to sort of convey this message, one of the ideas that we latched onto was discovery learning. So George E. Hine has this article called The Constructivist Museum, where he talks about sort of different ways that museums acknowledge knowledge itself and information, but then also how do they believe that information should be conveyed to others. So we immediately went, I think, for the discovery learning model because it just made the most sense for this exhibit. And so discovery learning essentially says that there is a set knowledge that we want the individuals who come to the museum to leave with. We have an agenda, we have a message, and we want them to leave with that message. But we want to allow them to kind of construct that message themselves rather than incrementally feed them this message. So that's really where discovery learning comes in. It's about having a set idea of what you want them to leave with, but at the same time allowing them to construct that. And then that goes hand in hand with how we want to evaluate whether this message is successful. And one of the big pieces that we've looked at twice, in fact, first in our museum studies course that preceded this, and then again in the class as we were discussing moving forward this specific exhibit, was this piece, Strangers, Guests, and Clients, Visitor Experiences in Museums by Zahava Doring. So this is from the 1990s. I think maybe 93 is the exact year. So it's a really groundbreaking piece in that it talks about 3 specific ways that museums treat visitors. So the first is stranger, and this is sort of like the old traditional model, in that the museum's primary goal is to maintain the collection, and visitors are, you're lucky enough to be able to see that collection essentially. And then this sort of changed, I would say probably in the 1960s is when that really started to transition to this educational model, which again still has like a power dynamic in that the museum kind of knows how you should be learning. So it creates its exhibit, and it creates its activities sort of with you in mind, because it's treating you as a guest, the visitor, but at the same time, it kind of assumes what the visitor needs and wants. But Zahava Doring suggested we move towards this client model, and that is that the museum itself is accountable to the visitor. So that's really important. And I know client at first can kind of sound like a monetary model, sort of like monetizing the activities of museums. But I think when you consider that, sort of visitor studies hadn't really been a field at this time, it is really groundbreaking in that sense. So that's sort of our mission, is to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the visitor. And to meet those needs, that's where we kind of talked a lot about accessibility. So we wanted to create a multifaceted and comprehensive visitor experience that's accessible to all. And so we looked at different ways we can incorporate interactives and how we can facilitate educational content. So that's, we drew from 2 specific articles there in doing that. But our exhibit, as you'll see in a little bit, does have a lot of different interactive components as well. So we really wanted to make this like a memorable experience, and not something that was just throwing a lot of information at individuals. And this is something that's been done in a lot of like science museums for a long time, these interactives, but it's still sort of behind in terms of like history museums and stuff like that. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve there and really create an exhibit that is fun and interactive for everyone, but also very, very educational as well. So this is our plans for the exhibit. So we have quite a few different mini exhibits all around that each student is curating, and they are going to wrap around the entirety of Old Library. And then at the center of Old Library, we're going to have a tree of life that's being constructed by the theater practicum class. So this is going to be a tree that's based on like a willow type tree that is going to have, it's going to be made from like recycled and reused materials. So it's really going to be like a wonderful way to draw people in, but at the same time, it conveys a message itself as well. And what was kind of cool about that is our intended opening, which was this Friday, is in fact Arbor Day. So the tree would have been a reminder of that as well. But that moves us into our individual exhibits that wrap around the tree of life in the center. So we're going to have Suburban Sprawl and Silent Spring, and that moves into the history timeline, which goes into modern activism. Then there's a loss of biodiversity exhibit. Then there's one that explores the modern climate crisis and energy use and the carbon footprint. And then finally, Westchester University's model for how it's interacting with day and environmentalism. So I'm going to turn it over to Foster now.
Hi, my name's Foster. I'm one of the student co-curators for this exhibit, and I've worked on the Rwanda exhibit as well as the Berlin Wall exhibit last year. So one of the ideas that we had pretty early on was that we were wanting to use dioramas as one of our exhibit components. Part of that was because the Delaware Museum of Natural History is loaning us multiple taxidermy animal specimens for our use in the exhibit. So we want to have the animals displayed in an interesting and engaging way for the visitors. So having a little portion of their natural habitat where they live is very important. So right here we have we're going to do a Silent Spring diorama. So we're going to have a backyard in Chester County. So this is the one that's at Los Angeles, of a Los Angeles backyard. That's kind of inspiring us. And then also we have a concept sketch from Riley, one of our student co-curators, who's doing the Peregrine Falcon diorama. So for here, we're talking about the kind of the sustainability issues with the Peregrine Falcon, where it's dealing with the aspects of having the DDT. So the DDT was a real issue very early on because it would get ingested into the Peregrine falcons by other animals that were exposed to it, and then the DDT would make their eggshells too soft, and the eggs would crack, resulting in the decline in population for the species. But now, in this current day, the peregrine falcons have migrated to more urban areas and are using skyscrapers to kind of make their homes and then hunt pigeons and other animals that are native to the city life. So for this exhibit component, we're having, we have the Silent Spring connection, we have the CBC can, and then we also have the car model of the Bugatti to kind of show the speed that this animal was able to hunt at.
Next.
Great, thanks, Foster. And so that flows perfectly. So this is like the sort of the first exhibit that people will visit as they walk in, and it flows perfectly into our history and activism exhibit, as Silent Spring served as a real catalyst for the environmental movement coming out in 1962. Then I'll let Tyler take over for history.
Yeah, so hello, I'm Tyler, and I'm part of the group working on the history and activism portion of the exhibit. So as Ben said, and as we showed in the overview of the whole exhibit, as you work around the museum space, past the Silent Spring diorama, it moves into our portion, which talks about the origins and impact of the Earth Day movement. And this sketch right here shows what our portion of the exhibit will look like when looking at it head-on the one wall of the museum. We have display cases on the floor there, which will contain the artifacts relating to events on our timeline. And above that is a large graph or set of graphs showing the negative changes to the environment in the same time period, such as climate change and rising pollution levels. And on the next slide, I believe, we have, yes, a photograph of our, or if you want to go back to the this one, yeah, this is a photograph of our first artifact for the exhibit, which is a Earth Day beach towel from 1970, the first Earth Day. And Ben, if you want to talk a little more about that.
Yeah, sure. So this was a really cool acquisition. It was lended to us by James Godbold, who I think is in the call. I think I saw his name. But I think he is a member of the Department of Mathematics, if I remember correctly. But he actually, oh, did he just say something in the chat?
That was Loretta said, wonderful artifact, which it is. It's really awesome. Thank you, Jim, for doing that.
Yep, it's a great piece. So he actually acquired this, I think he said either in 1970 or 1971 from a military base that he was stationed at. And you can see in the corner, that is a really interesting logo that I've done a little research on. And you see a lot of artifacts from the first Earth Day contain this logo. So that was actually created by a cartoonist in 1969. And it was made public, so it was part of the public domain, so anybody could use it, which was really cool, and that really helped facilitate its spread as like sort of a symbol of the first Earth Day. But it looks like a theta, but it's actually an E and an O overlaid over each other, the E representing environment and O sort of saying organism, like that the environment is its like own living organism. And then a magazine took this logo and placed it on the American flag and turned the American flag green. And apparently the green sort of represents like clean land, and then the white is supposed to represent clean air. But so we have a really cool piece that says a lot about the first Earth Day in just one item. So it's really awesome, and we thank James for giving us that.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to have some representation from the first Earth Day, like authentic artifacts from that period, and we're hoping to have more of those on display. But this slide, it's not a complete timeline, obviously. It doesn't have every events and the dates associated with them, but I'll kind of explain what we're kind of looking at as we're developing the timeline for this portion of the exhibit. So, as I mentioned, there'll be lots of historical data just about the negative trends that were taking place with the environment and animal life, climate, pollution, all of those to form the basis for our graphs that will kind of be the visual center point of that portion. For specific events, as mentioned, Silent Spring was a major influence when Rachel Carson published her book about the negative effects of DDT on plant and animal life and how public officials and corporations had covered those effects up. So the publication of the book was a landmark moment, along with ongoing natural disasters later in the decade, such as the Cuyahoga River in Ohio, which infamously caught on fire because of how polluted it was, and also major oil spills during this period. One area I've been putting a lot of focus on in particular was Gaylord Nelson, who was the governor of Wisconsin in the 1950s, and then U.S. Senator from Wisconsin in the 1960s. And he was a major early public advocate for sustainability and environmentalism. But he was frustrated that the federal government under President Kennedy was not doing enough in his eyes to address environmental issues. So Nelson decided that he needed to, he was inspired by the grassroots movements of the time, by student activism such as protesting the Vietnam War. And he saw those young people dedicated to their cause as a way for these issues to become more prevalent and to be more seriously addressed. So he reached out to some of those college activist groups and young activist groups, asking if they would help him plan a national teach-in day to educate the public about environmental issues. And after he initially contacted them, he was pretty much hands-off, and the first Earth Day was really a grassroots effort, which was planned on the local level throughout the country to create one first National Earth Day. So after that point in 1970, we'll talk about the effects of the Earth Day activism and how it did influence real action, such as the Clean Air Act, the founding of the Environmental Protection Agency, and protection for endangered species. And the final component of this portion of the exhibit is, in addition to talking about that student activism and youth activism, we're going to put a little focus on Indigenous activism. One of our group members, Krista McCalla, was doing her own research on the efforts of Native American groups to raise awareness of environmental issues, and she joined our group, and a portion of the exhibit will be dedicated to her research and findings.
So going off of the Illegal Wildlife Act, we have the Poaching and the Illegal Wildlife Trade exhibit, which I'm also co-curating with Ani. So one of the awesome opportunities we had with this exhibit was that Delaware Natural History Museum once again loaned us examples of confiscated objects of illegal poached animals. So we have a tiger skin rug right there, and then in that picture, and then we also have a shark skin boot and a Burmese python bag and stuff like that, which are very fascinating objects, ivory necklaces as well. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that when we put them on our exhibit here, we weren't glorifying them at all or making people want to desire to have them in their own homes. So we came up with this idea, Dr. Giovine and I, with the kind of an anti-wunderkampen. So early museums used to often be these cabinets of curiosities full of kind of objects from the natural world from all over the place, kind of put together and arranged in a way that looked more pretty than anything else. So we drew inspiration from the idea of peepholes in Marcel Duchamp's Étant Donné, as well as other exhibit components where you look in through a little hole to see the object and do not see the whole object at first. So with this exhibit design, we're hoping to, kind of increase curiosity and interactiveness with the museum visitors in something that wouldn't necessarily be a very interactive exhibit per se, but also to kind of create this sense of respect and curiosity for it.
Great.
Hi, I'm Melina, and I'm working on the exhibit, which is going to be talking about the ecological footprint and how that relates to climate change. And the exhibit will talk about specifically what the ecological footprint is and the definition, which is the impact of a person or community on the environment, which is expressed through the amount of land required to sustain their use of natural resources. And we're going to work to explain the contributing factors such as waste, pollution, manufacturing, and industry, as well as food, transportation, and the home. And then we're going to explain how these drive climate change and your ecological footprint. We will also demonstrate the actions that an individual can take to reduce their own ecological footprint, as well as the changes that are being made currently on a wide-scale basis. And this will focus and line up with the Earth Day of this year, which is climate change. And then this will also honor the past Earth Days. And then on the next slide, we plan on using a very visual technique to display our information, which would look like a web, and the ecological footprint is in the center of that web with the factors that most influence the ecological footprint branching out from the center. And then as an extension, we will also use a few interactives. One of these will be a stationary bike from Janet Cleaver, who is from the Westchester Green Team, and we will be sharing the bike with them while the exhibit is open. The bike was first used by the Chester County Citizens for Climate Protection, a nonprofit which recently became a part of the Westchester Green Team. The bike was first made and adapted by Millersville University students to connect to a direct current motor that is powered by pedaling a generating electricity. The electricity that is generated will light 4 different light bulbs, which are halogen, incandescent, fluorescent, and an LED light bulb. Each bulb requires a different amount of pedaling effort, with halogen needing the most. And then this will display how much energy is needed for each bulb and how energy use and consumption can be decreased. And then we are also looking to work with a solar panel company and hope to possibly get a loan of a solar panel, or at least a piece of a solar panel to show another form of alternative energy. And then an exhibit that is going to be closely related to ours and is going to be located close to ours as well. This is an exhibit on plastic pollutions and that accumulate in landfills and in the ocean. And one way that the effects of plastics will be demonstrated is through a diagram showing 3 water bottles that are displayed in 3 different ways. And then one will be in a landfill, the second will be polluting the ocean, and the final bottle will be recycled. The diagram will follow the lifespan of each bottle and explain the negative impacts of each of the bottles. And then this is similar to ours and will exhibit and display the problems as well as the changes and solutions that need to be made to reduce some of the negative outcomes. And then on the next slide will be our ecological footprint calculator. And this will be on an iPad, and it will offer the ability to be as specific or general as the visitor wants. And the calculator will give both their ecological footprint as well as their carbon footprint, and will provide information on what mainly contributes to these and what they can do to reduce both footprints. And then on the next slide, we have a request for a program to combine the results of every visitor who takes the quiz, and then we can show them at the end of the calculation, and then the information can eventually be shared with the university. And then on the next slide,
Sorry.
That's okay. And with the pandemic, my partner and I have had to change how we work and communicate. We can no longer have in-person communication, and now we rely on email and other forms of electronic communication as a way to continue planning our exhibit. And then with these changes that we've made to our schedule, my partner and I continue to do research and gather more information ideas. We're also working on our writing for the museum catalog, and we are using some of this extra time to get in contact with local companies to get, as I mentioned before, a possible loan of a solar panel, which was something we would not necessarily have the time to do before.
All right, hello everyone, my name is Natalie. I'm another one of the students doing research for the museum. I did previously work on the Berlin exhibit as well. This is my second go around here, but my partner Wendell and I are focusing more on the efforts that Westchester University has made in regard to different aspects of sustainability and climate action, things of that nature. So our research specifically is kind of focusing on the Gordon Natural Area, the geothermal energy, and as well as the climate action plan and how we can make changes on campus. I think it's important to emphasize the impact that students and faculty can make, because this did start as a grassroots movement, like Tyler mentioned earlier. And so I think by reminding everyone the different impacts that they can make individually, it's kind of leading towards a more cohesive goal of reducing our ecological footprint and things of that nature. So as far as the Gordon, we've just kind of done a lot of research on the efforts made by students in the 70s to kind of maintain and save that that space. So we have mentioned those two students who rallied together and sort of made the efforts to keep that as the natural space that it is, so that now 50 years later, we are able to use that space for, leisure, classrooms, environmental education, all this stuff. So I think it's really important that that's one of the forefronts in alignment with the Earth Day movement. As far as geothermal energy goes, this is an initiative that Westchester has made that I don't think that a lot of students know about, and I think that it would be interesting to sort of give everyone this information about how our university has made these efforts and changes to keep energy clean, empower ourselves in these different ways. So we have some interesting information about that. And then the climate action plan is something that kind of ties more directly into how students can make their way around campus and make changes in their lives and how they interact with our campus, as well as environmentally. So we plan to sort of have an interactive exhibit where you can look and see in different aspects. So the climate plan breaks down, in the curriculum, and how in the food and dining services, these things can be changed. So we plan to have a sort of hanging, I guess, exhibit where we can, have students make those connections themselves and have examples of what they can do on campus to make those environmental changes. In general, with, in the midst of a pandemic, we are just working from home. It's been easier than I think most groups can say to find the information that we need online. Everything is really available and accessible for us, so that's been not too much of an issue for us at all. And then what's next for us is just kind of writing our catalog up, setting up the exhibit when the time comes, and trying to make sure that we can represent all of these different plans and actions made at our university in our exhibit. On the next slide, I just have some images of the Gordon, and then of a pump that's used from the old pump house that we had. So that's just an artifact from our university, as well as some coal from the coal plant that was taken down and then was replaced by our geothermal energy initiatives.
That's the water, that's a cap on one of the geothermal.
Right.
Yeah. So we're really lucky, Brad facilitated that, the loaning of those.
Right.
There's a lot of people involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of interaction and collaboration with different places on campus. So I do want to say thank you to Brad Flam, and then also Ron McCall at Special Collections for helping us out and getting a lot of these different artifacts that we wouldn't have had access to. So I think it's going to be really cool for students to see and make that personal connection with their campus in this exhibit, and hopefully inspire them to kind of rethink the way that they live their daily lives and make an effort to make some more sustainable changes.
So, one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that, you know, the students come from lots of different disciplines. I mean, primarily they're either anthropology or history students, but there are a couple of biology students and a couple of other, you know, students with art history backgrounds and minors and things like that. And as you can see, everyone's bringing their own kinds of talents and their interests, whether it be more about indigenous activism or, you know, how to create wonderful dioramas and the design aspect, or whether they came specifically, as some of the students did, because they're interested in sustainability issues. They're able to kind of all come together and use those talents, working with faculty advisors. And we do want to say thank you, especially to Tom Hawkey and theater, for working on all this stuff. Do you hear, Tom? We're going to ask you to build something else for us too with this last exhibit, and all those other things, and so many other people that have been involved. So post COVID-19, what are we doing? So we're still trucking around, right? So we're still doing this evaluation stage. Right now, I can evaluate several different things: the big idea, the labels, the design process. We will still think about building up some visitor studies, so that when we do install, which basically today, Earth Day was supposed to be the soft opening of the exhibit, when we would invite peers, the friends and other faculty members to come in to take a look at it and give kind of what we call front end evaluation. So what needs to be tweaked, what doesn't make sense, what we should do differently, and then adjust the design, and then have the hard opening on Arbor Day, actually, which is always that Friday of alumni weekend. And this should have been alumni weekend. So that we'll have to put on hold. They're still working on the peer review catalog, and I think this is really, really important. As you can see, one of the hallmarks of this class is that students, in addition to understanding how to convey their information for public consumption in the more visual design orientation of a museum, they also write and publish an ISBN numbered peer-reviewed catalog that is professionally printed by Westchester University Press. The three of the last three are here as well. So one of the positive, I guess, things to come out of this exhibit, or of this COVID pandemic that's going on, is that there's more time to kind of really work with students on their independent research, crafting very well-written and robust and academic papers that can complement the exhibition. Typically, this is tacked on towards the end of about now in the design process. Students kind of rush to write something, and then I take the summer to write them back and give them critiques. So this, we're actually being able to devote more time and energy to, and I can tell we've done the first drafts already, and they're strong. They're much comparably a little bit more stronger than past, because there's more time to do that. So then we have the issue. One of the problems we have is that actually only 3 of our members, 2 of whom are presenting today, are graduating, but so we have to give them a grade. So the idea was that I said, look, this is a high impact learning experience. Everybody wants to put this up. We've devoted a lot of energy. I want to give no grades, and then when we're able to come back, we will set up the exhibit hopefully in the fall. I received a number of emails or people saying from the class, thanking us or me for this decision to postpone it, not just to completely just flip everything and do it, something different. Because I think with all the flipping that's going on online, while really good, and I praise everybody, all of my colleagues, and I've of course done 3 other classes that flip. It gives students something tangible to look forward to, an end goal to do, to think about planning something where they can meet with each other again face to face and do that. So whether or not we ever do that, at least we'll be able to do that. But the other 3 students are working on online things. So this is the exhibit is very important also because it's the inclusion for the community as well. We have images, students can present their work in this public fashion. I think Foster, you're going to talk. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah, so it's one of the really exciting things about the exhibit is when it's done and we get to present it and share it with the general public. So the opening, I've done the exhibit, this is my 3rd year of doing it, so it's kind of become part of my university experience as well. It's something I do every spring, and something we're passionate about, and just trying to make it as much of an event. And the more press and media and people who attend, the more potential down the road we have to do bigger and bigger and better exhibits. So that's kind of my thoughts, and I really enjoy the being able to share, like when we do the curation of the exhibit, and we do go around the room and every student co-curator talks about the exhibit. And I think that's a really valuable experience, because it's very rare, I think, in the museum world where you get to be in a room with every single curator who worked on the exhibit talking about their exhibit for you.
And so in lieu of the exhibit, and of course there's this great sense of pride, right, Foster?
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry, I talked over Tyler. Can I just have Tyler just say, if you wanted to say a few words about what you're doing as a graduating senior? This was Ben's final project, basically. But what's Tyler's?
Yeah, my final project is going to just be a virtual interpretation or preview of the exhibits, and I'm going to accomplish that using this software called Omeka, which is used by many university libraries and museums and other institutions to create digital archives of their collections. So my plan is to, once I have learned how to use it, I've learned it from my digital humanities class, which is part of the museum studies minor, in fact. But anyway, once I complete that, I'm going to take about a dozen or so artifacts that we plan to include in the final exhibit and create a virtual Omeka exhibit of them, and that will be shared online for anybody who visits our museum website to preview the final physical exhibit.
Okay, great. So one of the other things, that the reason why we still want to have this exhibit in real life whenever we can get back is because it is such an important, sustainability is such an important component of instruction at Westchester University, but also increasingly an important component in lower grades schools as well. We have been really fortunate to have a wonderful public outreach system, basically, that really fulfills our mission of being a welcoming, vibrant center where faculty and the greater Westchester public can connect and experience new ideas. In the Berlin Wall exhibit, we had upwards of 350, 400 unique non-Westchester University visitors, many of whom are elementary, middle-aged, and middle school and high school groups and senior groups. And we're really trying to plan for approximately 750,000 unique visitors, do some real educational outreach for these students, in addition to hosting something like the PASH Anthropology Conference, the first year experience students to come through. So I think that whenever we are back, we can really harness the power of an immersive museum exhibit to really help teach the community in a high impact fashion. And I think there's one more slide, right? Just to show that we are really grateful. I know Loretta is here from Westchester University's marketing and PR department. But we have generated a lot of press, especially from our last couple of exhibits. We have students that are working specifically on social media. There's a lot of word of mouth. Some of the school groups and senior groups that come to visit because they heard about it from other people or saw something at another museum. And so we are really grateful for that, and we hope that we can generate a lot more buzz now that we have a little bit more time, a little bit more expectations, and see it live. And thank you, Cheryl Wenko, for saying, yes, we need to see this live. I agree. Okay, I'm done, I think. Yeah. So Ben, you want to wrap it up real fast?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Sorry that we went well over our time. We are obviously very excited about this and could talk for hours, but thank you for coming. And if I have a few minutes for questions, I know some students will probably hang around for questions. So even though we did go over time, if anybody has any questions, we're happy to answer.
Yep. I know that Vishal had asked, and I think we addressed it, but Dr. Shah, our dean, our associate dean, asked about how we're going to be acknowledging, unequal inequalities, global social inequalities. But we do have many different components that do address that. Of course, Krista's indigenous activism, where she's looking at both Native American activism, like the Dakota Access Pipeline, but also South American indigenous peoples and some of their activism as well. But the whole thing is supposed to be kind of spread throughout, so that the human impacts and inequalities are addressed in that. I think we see some more. Does anybody else have any questions, or anybody want to, does any of the other students, I know that a lot of the other students who heard about themselves being talked about but didn't present, do you want to mention anything? No? Yes. Well, I guess we should end it here. Thank you very much. Please, thank you especially to all the faculty members that helped and hopefully will continue to help the students as we put this together. Thank you to our people who are loaning artifacts us. I know Jim is here, some people from the Earth Action. Thank you to the library, to Tom, of course, for all the work over the years. Hopefully this one, wonderful immersive exhibits. And thank you, of course, to the Dean's Office, to the Office of Sustainability, the College of Science and Mathematics, and our Department of Anthropology, Sociology, and History Department for helping to support this as well. So thank you so much. Please email me with any questions, or my students. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Michael, Benjamin, Foster, Natalie, Megan. I may be forgetting some names. I apologize. This was an excellent presentation. It is a huge topic, and you clearly have put some really good thought into trying to find a way, not trying, but finding a way to present history and the current efforts that people are making following 50 years of celebrating Earth Day. And it's just impressive, and we absolutely do need to see the real exhibit when we're able to be back together again. Please join us next week if you're able. And a few people are still here, Michael and the other co-curators. If you can answer a few questions now, if there are any remaining ones, that would be great.
Sure.
I am curious. Earth Day, the first one, 50 years ago, really was based on a lot of protests and agitation and anger at what people were seeing in the world and in the United States. Is that coming out in some of the research you're doing and some of the exhibits that you'll be putting together? I think of current movements like the Sunrise Movement that has just been so good at being fairly confrontational and being very clear about what the values they are promoting and what the problems they see other elements of our society contributing to. How is that anger, that protest, that agitation coming through in the work that you're doing?
I can tackle that a little bit. I think that's what's kind of really cool about the timeline is we have it sort of divided just by the nature of the door of Old Library being in the middle. We have this sort of division between like past activism and then current activism and kind of like making those connections. And so the current activism section is going to have some student signs from recent climate protests. And I think that'll be really cool when that's juxtaposed against, actual artifacts from the first Earth Day. And so we kind of can see how like this movement laid the foundation for the current movement, and sort of kind of taking a critical look at it as well, especially with the giant graphs that are going to be above the timeline, showing that like while Earth Day accomplished a lot, and we can see the legislative effects of Earth Day, at the same time like there's still work to be done, and that some of these trends continued in spite of an environmental movement. So I think that is like really going to be the thread between the two different periods in our timeline.
I think to add to that too, not only do we want to highlight resources that students can take advantage of in order to like kind of create a more sustainable life for themselves, but also to like mention different clubs on campus that they can join in the Westchester University section that can not like to sort of promote different organizations on campus that they can take advantage of as well, and maybe some of those organizations feel this sort of nature towards the movement itself. So I think that sort of encouraging people to look into those options as well is something we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that the point that everybody wanted to say is we don't want to turn anybody off, and we don't want to say that this is the way that you have to advocate, So the important thing is to show lots of different types of ways that behavioral changes or behaviors that you can do to promote the core important concepts of Earth Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious, sorry, I'm jumping in. I've got one more question. For those students in the class who are still on this call right now, I'm curious, did you come into the class already feeling committed to the concepts of sustainability? Did you think of yourselves as environmentalists? And has that changed over the course of this semester in spending so much time learning about Earth Day and its history?
I can count who came in because they said, I want to do something on Earth Day versus who came in and said, I want to do a museum exhibit versus, who came in for, I have no idea why, like for those kinds of things, because you're interested in museums as well. But yeah, from some of you guys, maybe you want to say, yeah.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm definitely more into the museum work aspect of it. But, I've always been very much an ally of environmentalists, but I don't know if I would even consider myself an environmentalist even now, just because I feel like that requires just so much energy and sacrifice. But I think the way we're going and, the research we're all doing, it's just, we got to do something. So I think with this exhibit, it's hard to, we're trying not to be political, but at the same time, it's become political. So you are making a stand that we do have to, make more sustainable choices.
Yeah. I think, what's great is that, this was promoted, of course, I had it promoted within some of my classes. And so you have several people like Natalie and some others who weren't on the call that went to Italy doing my sustainable food systems in Italy at Ethnographic Field School. I have 2-3 of you, Meg and Foster, who are here on the call, have done Anthropology 277, my sustainable food systems class with Trish Davidson in nutrition. So this is in many ways supplementing a lot of the kinds of education that we have, as well. But I think everybody's a little different. Meg, do you want to say anything? Because you were very much involved in the sustainability aspect. And if you have to go, please do. I'm late for my own class, but I'll still stay on.
So I'm an anthropology major, and I have a minor in museum studies I'm working towards. But I specifically I had always wanted to participate in this class, but I chose to do it this year because it's celebrating Earth Day, and I've always considered myself an advocate for the Earth and an environmentalist. I've brought that into other classes. I had a public opinion where I did presentations on the climate crisis, aspects like that. I've taken Dr. Giovine's sustainability course. I plan on going on the Italy trip. So yeah, I think I really feel strongly about sustainability and greener lifestyles. So I thought this was like a perfect merge of all my passions. So, and throughout this class, I've definitely learned a lot more. I specifically am in charge of the plastics exhibit. So I'm focusing on plastic accumulation in landfills and the ocean and the effects of plastic breaking down and all the different things that can happen. And so that is also one of my something I feel strongly outside of class as well. So it was really easy for me to take that and put it into this class, but I definitely learned a lot more through doing all this research and being exposed to everyone else's exhibits and research.
Great.
And can I ask one other thing? Kate, can you maybe share, you're a grad student taking the class, so you have a different interest maybe than other people. You have to take the mic off.
Yeah. Sorry, my cat's also knocking stuff over on the side. Yeah. But yeah, for me, I am much more interested in kind of the museum aspect, mainly because after I get my master's, I do want to move into museum work, preferably working in curation and stuff like that. So I wouldn't necessarily call myself an environmentalist in any kind of aspect. It's definitely interesting doing the research, and we definitely do need to do stuff about it, but I wouldn't say that that's a primary passion of mine, if that makes sense.
And that's the neat thing, so somebody like Foster and Natalie that have done, I have students who've done all 4 years, they've done projects. And what I've found is that they get really involved in some of these missions as they go along. I mean, we had a Latin American exhibit, and one of my students just became gung-ho about that, and really worked on human rights on the borderlands and did her own research and everything else. But they continue to repeat these things about the Berlin Wall, which is totally different than Rwanda, which is totally different than sustainability. So, it's neat to be able, and as you know, Kate and others, like, a museum, of course, has a focus, but though, you have to also play to what, the board of directors want to do, what other curators want to do. You have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And so it's nice to mix all that up.
I imagine the final product is going to be so much stronger for having people who are coming to the experience with a focus on the museum curation side, and others who have long been passionate about sustainability. I think that's great that you've got such a good mix. Yeah. And my questions have kept you all online longer than planned. So I don't want to delay you anymore from getting to the other things you have to do. But thank you, all of you, for putting together an excellent presentation.
Well, thank you so much. I'm late for my next class, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brad.
Okay.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone. You guys are great. Good job.